Hello and welcome. I hope you can hear me. At least this time my microphone seems to be switched on. Great. Hello and welcome to everyone who is either joining live or watching the recording later. I've prepared this short insight on the topic four spaces for real effectiveness, with the goal that you get to know a bit the concept behind four spaces and maybe also feel inspired to apply it in your everyday work. I personally found the model very eye-opening and would have found it very helpful in many situations I had before if I had known it earlier. And that's why I wanted to share it with you. And well, my name is Claudia. I'm self-employed as a team coach and organizational developer. And I'm also partner of Neue Narrative, which is a magazine for new work in Germany. And there I'm sponsoring the Four-Quadrant-Model. The Four-Quadrant-Model is in turn the foundation of the Four Spaces approach. So it's connected. And yeah, before we start, as mentioned, this session is being recorded. It's now my second time using this provider and LinkedIn Live. Let's see how this works out. And I already noticed there seemed to be quite a delay between me talking and when it's really broadcasted. That's why I already shared the link to the Mentimeter survey in the comments so that you can already log in and we don't lose so much time on it. Yeah, now grab your coffee or tea, get comfortable, and let's see what we are up to today. So the plan for today is that we first get to know the model as such and how it actually has an influence on our options to act. Then we will have a look into the power of tensions. And if you already heard of tension-based work, you may know the concept, otherwise be curious. And for me, it's also very important that it doesn't stay all theoretically. So theoretical. So I already also brought some concrete examples that we can have a look at, and that hopefully make it more tangible for you. And afterwards, on the last agenda topic, the last minutes, you can bring in your own cases, and I can give you my ideas on them, or you may also just ask questions about the model as such. Hint on that, you're already welcome to ask questions during the session, of course. There are two options: the LinkedIn comments that you can use. Just make sure or be aware that everything you post on LinkedIn is public. So this means the session is recorded and all your comments within are also recorded. So everyone watching this later will also see your comments. That's why I provided a second option, Menti. The link I already posted in the chat, so that you can also ask anonymous questions if you prefer that. Both options work. It's just the difference between going public with your comments or keep it anonymously. Okay, then let's start with the first topic. And to get to know the model, I would like to quickly dive into the four-quadrant model again. Because if you may have seen my videos on this on LinkedIn, you may already know it. Otherwise, also I put the link or the QR code to YouTube. I uploaded them to YouTube. Meanwhile, you can also browse my LinkedIn, of course, to check the videos to dive deeper into the model. So here, very short, the model was developed by Ken Wilber and focuses on transformation, because he noticed that most methods and frameworks only look at one small slice. Either they look at the structure or they look at the behavior, and there's always one or the other important perspective missing. And this often causes that transformations fail or take much too long. Wilbur then identified different perspectives to have a look at and that we should consider. He is coming from the interior and exterior view, but also the individual and the collective view. Because in organizations, we are, well, human beings and individual, but also we work in systems and we are not alone. So both is important. So in the end, the four perspectives to have a look at are the interior individual perspective, which is basically our personal mindset that we bring with us as human beings, our attitude that we bring with us. Then the exterior view on our individuals, on us as individuals, is our behavior that we show in our daily work. And this is, of course, also influenced by the interior or our mindset and attitudes. And as mentioned, we are not alone. So there is also the collective view on the interior, which we call culture. So this is where we have our shared norms, our ways of communication, etc. And on the exterior, on the collective side, you see also structures like org charts, processes, the corporate design, etc. And one of the main key insights on this model is that these quadrants interact with each other. So they're not independent. And if you want transformations to succeed, you need to consider all of them and check whether anything is blocking or contradicting in another way so that your transformation can really succeed. I don't want to dive too deep into this model as mentioned, as you can also check the videos later on. And I would like to start immediately with the model of the four spaces, which is based on the four-quadrant model. And this model was actually developed for the loop approach. The loop approach is basically a transformation journey towards self-organization and agility, and consists of various methods and tools and approaches, and this is one of them. And again, we have four quadrants, which represent our four spaces. Instead of the behavior, we now find the so-called operational space. The operational space is where I, as an individual, do my daily business. So it's attending my work meetings, work through my daily tasks. So this is basically what you were hired for and what you're doing in your day-to-day job. Connected to that is the so-called governance space. This governance space is the part where the structure is defined. And this means these are, for example, regulations, organizational charts, which roles do actually exist and which responsibilities do they have. So everything that is basically regulated around your work is the governance space. And these two spaces or quadrants are usually very well established in companies. And some companies are probably even overloaded with regulations and process charts and but usually, yeah, this does exist, and also the daily operations. Well, most of the people do their job daily, so this is working well. The thing is, what we learned before from the four-quadrant model is that there are two more quadrants that in companies and organizations often tend to get lost or not really considered. And this is on one side the so-called individual space. Individual space is, again, what I think, what is my mindset, my experiences, my strength that I do have as an individual and that I bring with me. And as we are not alone, also here there is, yeah, the collective part, and this is the so-called relational space. The relational space is everything what happens interpersonally. So where as we as humans come together, there is sympathy, there are conflicts, there's a certain connection or not. And just like in the four-quadrant model before, also these four spaces interact and influence each other. That means if we want to work well in our day-to-day business, we need a well-functioning relational space. We need connection. Because on the other hand, if there are many conflicts, and this is something you may have seen already, this slows down our daily work a lot, and then we avoid colleagues, or the meetings get extremely uncomfortable because there is this tension in the air, and it's really just fighting back and forth for no obvious reason. Or the same is true also if there is no governance, or the governance space is not really well established. So then it needs a clear framework to work well. So who has which role and is responsible for what? And this sounds very trivial, but in my opinion, this is actually not so clearly and transparently regulated in many organizations, and is one of the reasons why decisions then get stuck or important changes are not tackled, because it's not clear how and by whom they should be addressed. And as also mentioned, this individual space, so my mindset, my personal experiences, they also do influence how I'm doing my daily job. So am I more the perfectionist type, or am I very structured? So how do I approach my work? So what I bring with me? And even though this is very important, how often do you really have time at work to think about it, to reflect about yourself and your job? So if in the end you keep in mind that there are these four perspectives and that they do influence each other, in other words, if you think like this is a system, then you can actually expand your scope of action. And what this really means, we will have a look at now with the concept of the tensions. What is now happening in the four spaces and why we can use them, we will check out with the tensions. What is tension? So basically, tension is every impulse for change. Tension is really something you can feel physically, and something where you notice it's not optimal, it's not working perfectly, there is room for improvement. And this could be, for example, a concrete problem, a conflict, some needs that you perceive, wishes, a potential, doubts that you have, ideas. So it can be really different topics, and what they all have in common is that you feel there is potential for improvement. And you really notice there is a tension that you can improve, that you can solve. And what we tend to, or in like standard or traditional organizations, is that you get frustrated if the tensions pile up. What you should do instead to be more effective is to be aware there is this tension, and now take this tension into your four spaces, because there you can examine them and you can find solutions. And how we do that, I will show you with my 3 examples that I brought with me. And I think these examples, you probably can relate to them in one or the other way. You may also have experienced similar situations already. The first example I brought with me is the tension of you need support in a project. And if you now think about it, and for example, you look into the operational space and you notice, actually, I need, for example, an app developer. There's a concrete operational problem, a certain competence is missing. And now I can check, okay, in my role as a project manager, can I just request one with the standard process in the company, or buy one externally? And then you can, solve your tension. You may also notice that such a role does not exist. There is no way to purchase an external app developer. Then the problem rather lies in the governance space. So the structure is missing. And here you would start to, for example, to escalate to your manager, to find a concrete need that you have, and maybe also make a proposal for a concrete structure, rule, or role that you need. It may also be that if you reflect about it, that actually it is not really a skill issue that you miss. And maybe you rather feel left alone in your project team. You had different expectations from your project partners and project team members. So actually the problem may lie in the relational space. And in this case, the solution would rather be something like have a direct feedback with them, express what you need, talk to them to improve the relation and the interpersonal collaboration. And it could also be, to check our last quadrant, that you notice, if you reflect about it, that this is not the first time you need support. It's actually happening a lot because you have too much on your plate in general. You're always saying yes to everything that comes up, or you have really a messy self-organization. So actually it lies in your individual space, and the problem is rather with you than from the outside. And then it may be interesting to check either with the coach or to Google and to ask the artificial intelligence how to solve your issue. For example, by implementing a better self-organization system, self-management system, or to deal with the topic that you always say yes. You may have seen with this example already, with this tension and the four spaces, that there can be various root causes in the different quadrants, but also they provide different solutions. So if you start to consider the four dimensions, then the next steps may become clearer, or you have just more options. I would just dive into the next example so that it gets even clearer. The next example I brought with me is you are dissatisfied with the collaboration in the team. This is something, luckily for me, that happens a lot because well, it's basically my job to work on that. And well, if you reflect about it, it can be, for example, that you didn't like the tone that that came up in your last meeting, or you notice, oh, you barely see each other, and I really don't feel connected with my team. So the problem may lie in the relational space in this case. And solutions could then be just to bring it up in the team, to offer suggestions, to offer a meeting or communication workshop, to offer maybe team event. So to think, how can I solve the interpersonal topic? Maybe it does not come from the relational space. Maybe it's more a topic that you notice, oh, you have too many ineffective meetings, we have the wrong topics on the plate. And actually the structure is the problem. So the governance space in this case. And then you can check, maybe you have a proposal how to adapt the meeting structure, how to redefine the interfaces. Or if you're in the right role and it's within your circle of influence and decision making, maybe you can check also into operational space. For example, if you're again the one responsible for team, project team or team, and you notice it's very chaotic, you don't like the chaos you have in your collaboration, why not just introduce a shared work tool for better clarity and solve the problem like that? So maybe it's operational space and you can solve it like that. Or, and this is also something that I heard a lot and saw a lot, is if you really deeply reflect about it, it actually has nothing to do with the others, or well, it does have a certain way to do with the others, but it goes much deeper because you actually don't like the culture as such. You notice there's a lot of complaining going on. The tone in general is very aggressive. And here it's time to start to reflect in your individual space. What do you want? Can you cope with it? Do you want to stay? Or should you maybe seek a change or even leave the company? So this is the classical question of love it, change it, or leave it. And that's what happened in the individual space. Also here with this tension and this example, we saw there can be different root causes. And if we check really the four quadrants and the four spaces step by step, we will notice the different root causes, but also may find other solutions depending on the space. And again, there is more room to act when you look at it from different perspectives. What is also important here is not to mix them up. So if you don't like the collaboration in the team because of the tone, or you're not seeing each other often enough, you feel disconnected, especially if it's about a tone, maybe it's not a good thing to start with the governance space and define rules how to talk to each other. So this may be not the most optimal way to solve it. But it gets even clearer, hopefully, when I come to my last example. And this is something I also brought from my experience from my work life. Purchasing and marketing department are arguing about a supplier. I was long enough in purchasing to know that there are a lot of discussions between the different departments, especially when you're coming from purchasing. And I personally would probably have a look into the operational space first to check, is it clear who is responsible for what, how a decision is taken, are there concrete rules available, and who has which decision-making authority? Is there maybe also an escalation step available? And if there is, so you can solve it in your operational space and on your own. If you then notice, actually the escalation steps are not clear at all. It's not clear who is deciding and how, on which criteria, then it may make sense. Well, then actually the problem is in the governance space and the structure, and then it may make sense to also either escalate it to your manager or come up with concrete proposals on how should you regulate this in future to have an easier collaboration with their counterparts and interfaces. And another possibility could be, and this also happens very often, is you argue about a supplier, but actually it's not about a supplier at all. So this is just a placeholder for something much deeper. Because, for example, the marketing department may talk to the supplier behind the back of the purchaser. The purchaser doesn't feel really taken or doesn't really feel respected. Or the purchaser may come across very dominant, and the marketing department doesn't feel taken serious, or there is a lot of written communication back and forth that is misunderstood. Then the problem lies in the relational space, and it's time to work on the interaction and clarify that. How do you want to talk with each other? What do you like? What do you not like? To give feedback again. And it can also be, and this is something I also learned in my role as a purchaser, that sometimes we tend to take things at work very personal, which are actually just a matter of roles and actually organizational design. So, for example, in this case, it's natural and wanted by the organization that you have contradicting targets, and it's totally normal that you will start to argue, which is part of the idea, so that you really get the best solution for the company to have these two different perspectives of purchasing and marketing. And it's just a thing of don't take it personal. And this is something that is then happening in the individual space. And you could either go for a coaching or simply reflect it for yourself and accept that there are different roles and that it's totally normal to have tension. Again, I hope this example showed you that there is always a possible solution in all the four spaces. And sometimes one of the spaces may be more effective. So, for example, if you notice already, the operational space is clear because the roles are defined, it's all clear. So let's just go with the steps. Then use the most effective one, look for the most effective one, Sometimes you need to go for a mixture, so sometimes it's actually two different topics, or maybe a little bit of relationship topic and also structural topic. And sometimes you walk through the different spaces step by step because you try one, doesn't really work, so try another one. So you can also go step by step. No matter how you attack it, you become much more capable of acting. You have much more options if you look at all these perspectives. And this in the end means you are much more effective in your work because the likeliness that one of those options works and one of those spaces gives you a good solution is much higher than just to think in your, I would say, yeah, for example, only from the operational point of view. And what I also found very interesting is if you're really aware of the four spaces, if you're aware that these tensions come up and that you can look for problems and solutions in the four spaces, really regularly reflect on that, look for those solutions, you basically continuously improve your work life. And not only that, you probably also improve the organization as a whole step by step. So in the end, and this is where the circle closes, you do have a certain transformation as in the model of Ken Wilber, just that it's iterative, going in steps, but actually very small steps, and it's happening continuously. Yeah, so much about my input from the the functional side. I would like to thank you for your participation. And if you would like to explore this further, don't hesitate to stay in touch. You can either write me an email or just book an appointment with me and to dive a bit deeper into the topic. In any case, I hope that you found this impulse useful for yourself, that the model will help you to discover some new perspectives and allows you to move more effectively through your everyday work. And having said that, I wish you a great rest of the week and a great evening. Thank you for coming and watching.